3 months earlier, Captain Sarah Chen had been running freight between Earth's outer colonies for 12 years. And in that time, she'd learned one universal truth. Space was boring. Oh. The recruitment videos made it look exciting. Brave explorers charting unknown territories, making historic discoveries, uniting the cosmos. The reality was months of watching the same star patterns, eating recycled protein paste, and listening to her co-pilot Marcus complain about his ex-wife. I'm just saying, Marcus continued, his feet propped on the console of the wandering star. If she wanted someone who'd stay planet-side, maybe don't marry a freight hauler. Marcus, Sarah said without looking up from her tablet, you've been divorced for 4 years. Maybe it's time to move on. Easy for you to say. You've never been married? Exactly. I'm smart. Their banter was interrupted by a chirp from the sensor array. Sarah frowned. They were 3 weeks out from New Prometheus, deep in unmapped space, hauling mining equipment and frozen food. Nothing should be out here. Marcus, you seeing this? He dropped his feet and leaned forward. What the hell is that? The sensor screen showed something massive, ship-sized. No, fleet-sized. Multiple contacts, big ones moving in formation. Unknown vessels, Sarah muttered, her fingers flying across the console. Running signature analysis, she paused. Marcus, these aren't human ships. The words hung in the air like a held breath. First contact protocols were drilled into every spacer from their first day of training. Stay calm. Broadcast piece. Don't make sudden moves. The protocols assumed that any species capable of interstellar travel would be reasonable, civilized, capable of communication. The protocols were written by optimists. Broadcast standard greeting on all frequencies, Sarah ordered, and charge the emergency jump drive. Just in case. Marcus nodded, his hand steady despite the tension in his jaw. Wandering star to unknown vessels. This is Captain Sarah Chen of Earth. We come in peace and request peaceful contact. For 30 seconds, nothing. Then every screen in the cockpit flared red. They're locking weapons, Marcus shouted. Jump, now! But the jump drive needed 90 seconds to charge and they had maybe 20. The lead ship, a monster covered in spikes and scarred metal that looked like it had been grown rather than built, opened fire. Not with lasers or missiles, but with something that made space itself scream. The first bolt hit their starboard engine. The wandering star spun wildly, alarms shrieking. The second bolt took out their communications array. Drives at 60%. Marcus yelled over the noise. Sarah fought the controls, but the ship wasn't responding. Through the viewport, she could see the alien vessels closing in, and now she could make out details. Bones welded to the hulls. What looked like trophies. Weapons that seemed designed for maximum suffering rather than efficiency. These weren't explorers or merchants. These were predators. 75%. Another impact. The hull breach alarm screamed. Emergency bulkhead slammed shut. Sarah's tablet flew across the cockpit as the ship tumbled. Marcus, 90%. Come on, come on. Through the viewport, Sarah saw something that made her blood freeze. One of the alien ships was extending what looked like grappling hooks. Massive barbed things that trailed chains. They weren't trying to destroy the wandering star, they were trying to capture it. Jump. Jump now. It's not... Space folded. The sensation was like being torn apart and stitched back together. Sarah's vision went white, then black, then exploded into colors that shouldn't exist. She tasted copper and heard screaming that might have been her own voice. Then, mercifully, it ended. They materialized in normal space. Alarms still blaring. Sarah's hands shook as she checked their position. They'd jumped blind, no coordinates, no calculations, just raw emergency protocols throwing them anywhere that wasn't where they'd been. Marcus, report. Silence. Marcus. She turned. Her co-pilot's chair was empty. No, not empty. There was blood on the headrest and his harness hung loose, torn. A hole in the hull behind his position, barely wider than a fist, showed stars where metal should be. The jump had torn him away. Sarah sat alone in the damaged cockpit of the wandering star, 300 light-years from home, and felt something she hadn't experienced since basic training. Pure, distilled terror. But beneath that terror, something else stirred. Something that would have made those alien predators pause if they'd known humanity's history. Humans had been prey once. Then they'd learned to hunt. Admiral James Kowalski had served in the United Earth Fleet for 32 years. He'd commanded destroyer groups, negotiated trade disputes, even fired shots in anger during the Mars Rebellion. He thought he'd seen everything. Then Sarah Chen stumbled onto Luna Command wrapped in an emergency blanket and told him about the aliens. They didn't even try to communicate, she said, her voice hollow. She hadn't slept in the 40 hours since her emergency beacon had been picked up by a patrol ship. They just started shooting, like we were targets in a firing range. Kowalski watched her from across his desk. Behind him, Earth filled the viewport, peaceful and blue and completely unaware of what might be coming. Captain Chen, I need you to be very clear. These ships, you're certain they weren't human? Not pirates with modified hulls? Admiral. Sarah looked up and Kowalski saw something in her eyes that made him uneasy. I've hauled freight for 12 years. I know human ships. These weren't human. The architecture was wrong. The weapons were wrong. Everything about them was, she paused, wrong. And you believe they were hostile? They killed Marcus. They tried to capture my ship with hooks. Hooks, Admiral, like we were fish. What would you call that? Kowalski sighed and pulled up his console. For the past 6 weeks, we've lost contact with 3 survey ships, 2 research stations, and now your freighter. All in the same general sector. Fleet Command assumed technical failures or accidents. But if you're right, I'm right. Then we have a problem. He tapped a command. I'm bringing in someone you need to meet. The door hissed open. A woman entered, mid-40s, athletic build, with the kind of cold eyes that came from making hard decisions. She wore civilian clothes, but her posture screamed military. Captain Chen, this is Dr. Keiko Tanaka. She runs the Xenological Threat Assessment Division. Sarah blinked. The what division? We don't advertise, Tanaka said, her voice crisp. Admiral, I've reviewed Captain Chen's sensor logs. What she encountered matches the profile. What profile? Sarah demanded. Tanaka pulled up a holographic display. 3 years ago, we intercepted a heavily damaged probe at the edge of the heliosphere. It was broadcasting a message, a warning. The language took months to decode, but the meaning was clear. They're coming. The harvesters are coming. Run while you can. Sarah stared at the alien symbols rotating in the hologram. Who sent it? A civilization called the Pillar. Advanced, peaceful, technologically sophisticated. According to the probe's memory banks, they'd been attacked by a species that conquered through terror. They called them the Krell. Tanaka's expression hardened. 6 months after we received that probe, we lost contact with a deep space observatory. Last transmission showed ships matching the ones you described. Why wasn't this made public? Because, Admiral Kowalski said quietly, the Pillar message contained one more piece of information. The Krell Empire spanned 600 star systems, their military numbers in the billions, and they've never, in 3,000 years of conquest, met significant resistance. The office fell silent except for the hum of ventilation. Sarah finally spoke. How long until they reach Earth? If they're interested in us? Based on their expansion pattern? Tanaka brought up a star chart showing a slow, inevitable tide of red markers. 18 months. Maybe less. Sarah's laugh held no humor. So what do? 18 months isn't enough time to evacuate Earth. Isn't enough time to build a fleet that could stop billions of warriors. What the hell do we do? Admiral Kowalski and Dr. Tanaka exchanged a look. Actually, Kowalski said slowly, we have a plan. It's desperate, probably insane, and violates about 40 interstellar warfare conventions that we just made up. But it's a plan. He pulled up a new file. Sarah read the header. Operation Terror Protocol. Captain Chen, Tanaka said, how do you feel about becoming bait? War Master Zexthor should have been pleased. The humans' outer colonies had fallen even faster than the Pillaran worlds. Their defenses were laughable. Kinetic weapons, chemical explosives, technology centuries behind the Krell standard. The harvests were easy, the terror absolute. But something nagged at him. They're not fighting back, he said to Krellnoth as they reviewed the latest reports. Not really. Their military retreats before engaging. Their civilians flee rather than defending. It's wrong. Krellnoth clicked in confusion. War Master, they're prey. Prey runs, not all prey. The Pillaran fought for every world. The Drex before them sacrificed entire cities in futile resistance. It's what prey does when they're desperate. They bare their teeth even knowing they'll lose. Zexthor's tail lashed. But the humans just leave. Perhaps they're wiser than the others. Perhaps they've accepted their fate. Or perhaps, Zexthor said slowly, they're leading us somewhere. It was then that the sensor officer called out, War Master, we're receiving a transmission. Human origin. Demanding surrender? No, War Master. There. Asking for a meeting. Zexthor felt his combat instincts flare. A trap, obviously, Krelnoth agreed. What prey would willingly approach a predator? But Zexthor was intrigued. In 3,000 years, no species had dared such a thing. What are the terms? They request a diplomatic envoy meeting. Neutral location. Limited ships. They say, the censor officer hesitated. They say they wish to discuss terms of surrender. They want to surrender the entire species. Krelnoth's scales rippled with excitement. This would be the greatest harvest in Krell history. Zexthor said nothing. He was thinking about the retreating military forces, the evacuated colonies, the conspicuous lack of real resistance. A pattern was forming, and patterns meant plans, but he was also thinking about his place in history. War Master Zexthor, who brought humanity to its knees without a single major battle, who broke an entire species' will so thoroughly they surrendered preemptively. Pride was a predator's weakness. Zexthor knew this. He gave the order anyway. Accept their terms. Take 3 battle groups. Overwhelming force, but not our entire fleet. He bared his teeth. Let's meet these humans and hear their begging. The neutral location was a barren moon orbiting a gas giant. No strategic value, no resources, nothing but rock and ice. Perfect for what Admiral Kowalski had in mind. Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the heavy cruiser Retribution, her new command. It still felt surreal. 2 months ago, she'd been hauling frozen food. Now she was part of the most desperate military operation in human history. Krell ships dropping out of FTL, the censor officer reported. Reading 3 dreadnoughts, 15 cruisers, countless smaller craft. They brought an army. Good, Kowalski said calmly. He stood at the center of the bridge, hands behind his back, looking every bit the veteran commander. Beside him, Dr. Tanaka monitored a separate console, her expression unreadable. Sir, Sarah said quietly, are we really going to surrender? Kowalski smiled, and it was the coldest smile Sarah had ever seen. Captain Chen, humanity has been at war with itself for thousands of years. We've perfected every conceivable method of killing each other. Bombs, bullets, blades, bioweapons, you name it. He gestured to the viewport where the Krell fleet was taking position. Those things out there think they've perfected fear. They don't understand. They've never met a species that weaponized paranoia, that turned terror into an art form. They're hailing us, communications reported. Put them through. The main screen flickered. The Krell War Master appeared, and Sarah had to suppress a shudder. He looked exactly like something from humanity's worst nightmares. Scales, claws, dead red eyes that held no mercy. Humans, Zexthor said, his translator rendering the words in flat, emotionless English. You requested this meeting. Speak your surrender terms quickly. My patience is limited. War Master Zexthor, Kowalski said calmly. Thank you for accepting our invitation. However, there's been a misunderstanding. We're not here to surrender. Silence on the channel. Then why? Zexthor finally said, his voice dangerous. Am I wasting my time? We wanted to show you something. A gift, really. Call it a demonstration of human culture. Kowalski nodded to Tanaka. She pressed a button. Throughout the Krell fleet, 1,000 small devices activated simultaneously. They'd been attached to the Krell ships over the past week by stealth drones. Tiny, undetectable, patient. Now they broadcast on every Krell frequency at once, not weapons, information. What is this? Zexthor demanded as his screens filled with data. Your homeworld, Kowalski said pleasantly. We mapped it 3 weeks ago. Beautiful planet. That red giant you orbit? Very distinctive. Easy to find. Sarah watched the Krell War Master's expression change. Confusion. Then understanding. Then something she never expected to see on an apex predator's face. Fear. Those are coordinates, Zexthor breathed. Precise coordinates, Tanaka confirmed. To your homeworld, your primary military shipyards, your 3 largest colony worlds, your supreme command center, and... She smiled. Your birthing creches, where you keep your eggs and younglings. The bridge of the blood hymn had gone deadly silent. You wouldn't dare, Krelnoth hissed. War Master, Kowalski continued. You've spent 3,000 years perfecting fear. You attack prey species and expect them to break. But humanity? We were prey once. We know what prey does when it's cornered. You're bluffing, Zexthor said, but his voice wavered. You don't have weapons capable of reaching your homeworld? Kowalski interrupted. True, our FTL is slower than yours. Our ships couldn't get there before you returned and reinforced defenses. But tell me, War Master, do you know what a relativistic kinetic kill vehicle is? Sexthor didn't respond. It's simple, Tanaka explained. Take a large mass, say a 100-ton block of iron. Accelerate it to 90% of light speed. Aim it at a planet. The resulting impact releases energy equivalent to several gigatons of explosives. We don't need FTL. We don't need to arrive before you. We just need to launch. She brought up another display. 3 months ago, we launched 47 such devices. They're unmanned, nearly impossible to detect and accelerating constantly. They'll reach Krell space in 8 months. Sarah saw it then, the moment the War Master truly understood. His scales went pale, his claws retracted slightly. You would destroy an entire world, he whispered. Kill billions. For what, revenge? No, Kowalski said, and his voice dropped to something quiet and terrible. For time. You see, War Master, we did the math. If those kinetic kill vehicles impact your homeworld, your shipyards, your colonies, you'll lose perhaps 10% of your population. Devastating but survivable. Your empire would endure. Then why? Because of what happens next. Every species you've conquered, every world you've harvested, every slave race you've broken, they all hate you. Right now, they're too afraid to rebel, but if your homeworld burns, if your mighty fleets have to rush home to defend what's left. Kowalski leaned forward. War Master, we sent the coordinates to everyone. The Pillaran survivors, the Drex, the Valen. 20 different conquered species now know exactly where you live and that you're vulnerable. You want to start a war, Sexthor said. A war that would consume the sector. We want you to leave, Sarah said, surprising herself by speaking. We want you to take your ships, your soldiers, your terror, and go home. Defend your world. Spend the next century rebuilding your defenses. Forget Earth exists. And if we refuse, then in 8 months your homeworld becomes a monument to the lesson humanity learned long ago. Kowalski's expression was stone. Prey can become predator. The hunted can hunt, and sometimes the only way to stop a monster is to become something worse. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Sexthor did something that no conquered species had ever seen a Krell do. He backed down. This isn't over, he said. Humanity has made an enemy today. No, Kowalski replied. Humanity made an enemy the day you attacked our ships without warning. Today we just taught you why Earth's deadliest predator isn't the one with the biggest teeth. The channel cut. Within an hour, the Krell fleet was gone, jumping back toward their territory in full retreat. Within a day, sensors showed massive fleet movements as they scrambled to defend their homeworld from a threat that was already in motion. On the bridge of the Retribution, someone started clapping. Then someone else. Soon the entire crew was applauding, tears streaming down some faces. Sarah found herself standing next to Dr. Tanaka. Did we really launch those kinetic kill vehicles? Tanaka smiled slightly. 47 of them. Just like I said, will you actually let them hit the Krell homeworld if they don't stand down? The smile faded. Captain, I hope we never have to answer that question. Because the truth is, I don't know. That's a decision for people way above my pay grade. She paused. But the Krell don't know that. And they won't risk finding out. Sarah looked out at the stars, at the vast emptiness that suddenly felt a little safer. We didn't beat them with superior weapons or numbers, she said quietly. No, Tanaka agreed. We beat them with fear. We showed them they're not the only species willing to do terrible things to survive. Sometimes that's enough. 6 months later, Sarah Chen stood in the observation lounge of the newly constructed orbital station Watchtower Prime. Earth hung below, peaceful and oblivious to how close it had come to falling. The Krell had retreated entirely from human space. Intelligence reports showed they were fortifying their homeworld, recalling fleets from frontier territories. Exactly as predicted, several conquered species were beginning to rebel. Sensing weakness, the sector was descending into chaos, but Earth was safe. For now, Captain Chen. She turned to find Admiral Kowalski approaching, 2 coffee bulbs in hand. He offered her one. Thought you might need this. I hear you're shipping out tomorrow. Back to freight hauling, Sarah confirmed. Turns out I'm terrible at military discipline. Who knew? Kowalski chuckled. You did fine. Better than fine. You gave us the intelligence that started all this. I lost Marcus doing it. The Admiral's smile faded. Yes, you did. And we've lost 3,000 others in skirmishes with Krell stragglers. That's the cost. He sipped his coffee. But because of what we did, 8 billion people get to keep living their lives. That has to mean something. Sarah watched Earth rotate slowly. Do you think they'll come back? The Krell? Eventually. Maybe not in our lifetime, but eventually. Species like that don't forget humiliation. He paused. But maybe by then we'll be stronger. And maybe they'll have learned the lesson we taught them. What lesson? That humans are crazy enough to threaten genocide? No, that fear works both ways. And that the galaxy isn't divided into predators and prey. It's divided into those who adapt and those who don't. Kowalski finished his coffee. The Krell spent 3,000 years perfecting terror. We spent 10,000 years surviving it. That's the difference. Sarah said nothing for a moment. Then those kinetic kill vehicles. Are they real? Kowalski smiled enigmatically. That's classified, Captain. Come on, Admiral. I think I've earned the truth. He considered, then sighed. 47 kinetic kill vehicles were launched. Just like Tanaka said. They're real, they're in transit, and in 2 months they'll reach Krell space. Will you recall them? The things about relativistic projectiles, Captain. Once you launch them, they're almost impossible to stop. Too much energy, too much momentum. He met her eyes. Fleet Command is debating. Some want to send the abort signal, prove we're better than our threats. Others want to let 1 or 2 hit, make sure the lesson sticks. And some, he trailed off. Some want to let them all hit, Sarah finished quietly. Wipe out the Krell homeworld completely. Fear works both ways, Kowalski repeated. The question is, how far are we willing to go? How much of our humanity do we sacrifice to keep humanity safe? Sarah didn't have an answer. Dr. Tanaka sat in her office deep within Luna Command, reviewing the latest intelligence reports. The Krell weren't the only threat out there. The galaxy was full of dangers, and humanity had barely scratched the surface of what was possible. But they'd learned something crucial. They'd learned they could fight back. Her console chimed. Encrypted message from Fleet Command. She opened it and read the single line. Terror protocol effective. Proceed to Phase 2. Phase 2. The expansion of the Xenological Threat Assessment Division. Real military funding. Authority to develop new weapons, new strategies. New ways to ensure that what happened with the Krell never happened again. Humanity was done being the newcomer, the weak species, the prey. From now on, they would be the ones others feared. Tanaka closed the message and allowed herself a small smile. Aboard the Blood Hymn, War Master Zexthor stared at tactical displays showing his empire crumbling. Rebellions on 6 worlds, supply lines cut. Military resources stretched thin defending the homeworld from a threat that might or might not arrive, all because of one species. One prey species that refused to act like prey. War Master, Krellnoth entered the chamber cautiously. The Council demands a report. They wish to know when we will resume expansion. Zexthor didn't turn from the displays. Tell the Council that humanity has taught us a valuable lesson. What lesson? That fear is a weapon that cuts both ways. For 3,000 years we wielded it without challenge. We forgot that even prey can bare its teeth. He finally looked at his second. Humanity didn't beat us with superior weapons or numbers. They beat us by being willing to commit to an action we thought only we were capable of. Total, absolute destruction. So what do we do? Zexthor's scales darkened to near black. We adapt, we learn. And when we return to human space, if we return, we'll do so knowing that the humans will fight with everything they have, because they've proven they have nothing left to lose. They inspired fear in us, Krellnoth said quietly. Prey inspired fear in the Krell. No, Zexthor corrected him. We inspired fear in them first. They simply introduced us to something we'd never truly experienced. What? Terror. Epilogue. The message on a frozen moon at the edge of Krell space, an automated beacon continued broadcasting. It had been there for weeks, placed by human operatives during the chaos of the Krell withdrawal. The message was simple, repeating on all frequencies. To all species of the Andromeda sector, humanity extends greetings and offers protection. We have shown the Krell that conquest has a price. We will show any who threaten the weak that terror is not the sole province of the strong. Earth stands ready. Earth remembers. And Earth does not forget those who prey upon the innocent. It was propaganda, of course. Humanity didn't have the resources to protect an entire sector. They were still struggling to defend their own territory, But the message wasn't about resources or capability. It was about will. And in the dark spaces between stars, where countless species huddled in fear of the Krell and others like them, that message was heard. It was discussed. It was debated, and it was believed. Because humanity had done what no other prey species had managed. They'd made the predators afraid. In the grand scope of galactic history, it was a small thing. One species, one victory, one moment of defiance. But sometimes, that's all it takes to change everything. Far above Earth, Sarah Chen piloted the Wandering Star 2 toward the outer colonies, her hold full of mining equipment and frozen food. Just another freight run. Just another day in the boring vastness of space. Except now, when she looked at the stars, she didn't see indifferent emptiness. She saw a frontier that humanity had claimed through courage, cunning, and a willingness to do whatever it took to survive. The Krell had inspired fear in countless worlds, but humanity had introduced them to something far more primal, far more ancient, far more powerful. Terror, and in the end, that made all the difference. The end.